Let the dragon consume you! Enemy sighted. Stop the payload! Stop the payload! In 5, 4, 3, 2.
And we're back. Welcome to episode 56 of the Bird Watchers. I'm your host, Ryan. In this episode, we're going to talk about Stage 4, Week 4. So you know the drill. Let's get into it. The news so far. So nothing crazy in the game has happened. Nothing has changed. Since roll lock is out, that's still going on. People are getting comfortable. It's been great, in my opinion. It's been a more pleasurable experience overall. But we do have, news-wise, 2 watch parties coming up. So they're not the final watch parties. I know we're coming to the end of the regular season, but remember, we have the playoffs, we have Worlds, we have season 3 of Contenders, and then we have, Contenders again right after that, and then we're right back into the season. Actually, that is some news. Hey, I remember the 2020 schedule was released recently, which has a few changes on it. First one being that there's no more stage playoffs, right? They cut that out so that traveling can be more managed. The other big change is that the games are on Saturday and Sunday. So that's huge, right? Because you're cutting out a good chunk of the days when those games will be played. Who knows what kind of effects that will have? And we're still far out, right? So things can change since it's them just like it was literally probably a day ago where they made that public. So I'm interested to see what people think about the traveling, how that's going to work out. A lot of teams are announcing some of their venues. Some teams have announced like half of their venues and they're still working on the other ones. Like I said, we have plenty of time to get that stuff sorted out and plenty of details to come from that. So I'll try to keep you guys updated on that specifically, since that's huge, right? Considering Atlanta was, one of the teams that got the pleasure of doing a homestand this year. So to see other teams get that option is going to be exciting to see what they choose to represent their cities and their teams. But yeah, so we have 2 watch parties. Back to what I was saying before. The first one's going to be at Battle and Brew. That one's on the 24th of August at 4 p.m. And that one's going to be against Dallas Fuel. So we have 2 last games to play. Unfortunately, we got another double header, or what we call double W weekends, because the goal is to get both wins. The second watch party is actually a special event. This one's going to be hosted by Atlanta Reign. So not the Atlanta Royal family. This is hosted by Atlanta Reign, Bud Light, and Buffalo Wild Wings. So if you've paid attention, there's been some other teams that have done this collaboration with Buffalo Wild Wings to put watch parties together for certain games. We are lucky enough to get it for our last game in the regular season, which is awesome. This event's actually going to be starting at 2:30, which is well before the game, but it's running kind of long. I think it runs to like 6:30. If you need any details, you can go to the Atlanta Reign Facebook. You can go to the Atlanta Royal family Twitter, the Atlanta Royal family meetup. It's all there, right? You can find it if you look for it, or you can just listen to this and I'll tell you. But yeah, it's the 25th, so it's the Sunday following that Saturday, and starts at 2:30 to 6:30. All right, so that's the watch parties. That's the news. So as is usual, it's time for standings. So teams are kind of trying to lock things up. You have a lot of giants playing other giants that are already in the playoffs, just trying to get a better seed. You do have some teams playing that have, no hope or no dog in the race. A lot of people have been clinched, and a lot of people have been kind of eliminated from the possibility of playoffs. But it's still exciting final week to kind of see what we're going to get going into the playoffs for those teams that are going to make it, right? Because remember, we do have a play-in section. So if you're not 1 through 6, those are the players that are locked. Anything outside of that to 12 has to play in, which is kind of like a wild card situation you've probably seen in NFL, NBA, and other sports. But for standings this week, we started Thursday. And on Thursday, we started with Boston Uprising versus Florida Mayhem. Mayhem has had this turnaround out of nowhere. It doesn't seem like, for a team that's constantly been in flux and has constantly had change, it's interesting to see them just decide to perform better. I'm going to go off of that. That is the extent of my details. They just decided to play better. Side players still popping off. That's nothing crazy outside of that. But then we move to Dallas Fuel versus Hangzhou Spark on this Thursday, and Spark take it 3-1. That's kind of the way we expected it to go. Spark has been looking again in form, getting ready to go to the playoffs and to show off, being one of those top 6 teams. We then have Dynasty versus Dragons. Dynasty's taking this 3-1. This could have went either way. Both of these teams have been kind of hot and cold towards the end of this season. Their performance has always been lapsing. I don't say lapsing, but in flux as we progress through the season. So I couldn't have told you, and I didn't tell anybody because, I have friends and we make picks before this happened, and I couldn't choose in this one. This could have went either way. But props to Dynasty for taking this one 3-1. This takes us to Friday, where we started with the map everybody was talking about, the match everybody was talking about, which is weird, right? Because it's Justice versus Rain. And it's going to be a map we're going to talk about as well today. The Justice versus the Rain, because both of these teams are undefeated up to this point in this stage, and that's been huge, right? The whole Justice turnaround, the Rain kind of on this rally of what we're calling Road to Grand Finals, trying to get place for playoffs and also see if we can get that top 6 seed, which would be insane. Like I said, our first year, right? I've been saying this the whole time. Beyond proud of these guys. We'll talk about this match definitely today. We have Hunters versus Shock next. Shock taking this 4-0. Hunters kind of petered out towards the end here. It seems like, their 2-2-2 is strong when everybody else wasn't playing 2-2-2. And now that they kind of have some competition there, it's not what we're used to seeing, right? So we'll see what they do going into next year. If I'm pretty sure they're just going to keep the same team and you just practice up a little more with everyone now in that same realm of character picks, right? We then have Gladiators versus Sparks. Yet another game we're going to talk about because this was a great one. This is a real good one. This is the battle for the top, right? I think you had Gladiators at like 4 and Spark at 5 or somewhere in that before this match. So they're just kind of playing for better seeding in the postseason. This takes us to Saturday. On Saturday, we had Paris Eternal versus Dragons. Eternal, again, surprising, winning this one 3-1. This was definitely an upset. We have Valiant then go against Boston Uprising. Valiant 3-1 as they get ready to head into their homestand, which I'm looking forward to because we have 2 games during that. That's going to be really good. I think, the whole Kit Kat situation is good for Valiant because they're going last. They're going with a schedule of teams playing that are like a lot of heavy hitters in this one compared to the other 2 homestands. And they had the example being set by Dallas and then by Atlanta to pretty much get this one completely right. I hope I hear no issues. I mean, it's a big event, right? And any event is a miracle that it even happens. But I hope there's no issues for them because they've had plenty of time to prepare and plenty of examples to learn from. But Valiant beating Uprising here 3-1. We have Dynasty then going against Fusion 3-1. Like I said, Fusion's not a team I root against because I think they can win any match. It's kind of like the Gladiator situation. They're just haven't been fun to watch. I'm sorry. It's like their games are boring. There's no emotion there. There's no standout. It's just like, yeah, they're a good team and we'll see what happens. It sucks to say that, but that's kind of what it is. We then move to Houston versus Outlaws. Houston versus Outlaws, Hunters versus Outlaws, and Hunters win here 3-2. Houston, not a team I'm confident in winning at any point because they kind of it's almost random. It's almost as random as the Mayhem currently winning is if the Outlaws will win a game or not. We'll leave that at that. We move to Sunday with Spitfire going against Rain 4-0ing here. A huge surprise to me, even as a Rain fan. I thought this was going to be let's say we prepared, and the way I explained it before was that for Spitfire, you have to prepare for the best version of the Spitfire team. Because even at the worst version of the Spitfire team, they can still beat teams handedly. But the best version, if you don't practice for that, they're going to surprise you and they're going to roll you over you. Turns out we did the opposite, right? We 4-0'd here and it was insane. We followed up with Justice versus Eternal. Justice still dominating. Justice take this one 3-1. We then had Mayhem versus Defiant. Defiant looking to the future and getting 4-0'd here by Mayhem. Like I said, I don't know what Mayhem's doing. I can't explain it, right? I would have to dig deeper, and I'm not going to. It is still the Mayhem. We'll see what this has to say for next year, though. It's going to be exciting because they're still making changes to the team and the management. And it's the usual Mayhem stuff. But at least they're winning now, so that's cool. Then we finished up with Fuel versus Charge 4-0ing here. A game with really nothing at stake. So this takes us to our first map today, our first match. I don't know how many times I've said that so far. You should keep a count. But we're going to start off with Gladiators versus Spark. So, like I said, two Titans currently in great position. It's a weird situation, right? Where Spark and Gladiators both have had their issues as far as, roster swapping. Like, think about it. Currently, Spark now has Guzhui as the only Chinese player on their team, and he's their shot caller. Yeah. And their main tank. That's a big deal. But he's still doing it because the whole Crystal situation. Crystal's no longer with the team because of all those shenanigans you can find on Reddit. The competitive Overwatch Reddit got it right again. If you're not following, follow. If you haven't joined, join. But yeah, so that's huge for them, right? And they've been having these back and forths before they decided to put Guzhui in the lineup because of the language barrier in the middle of the season, where they were trying to figure out things and they were losing games here and there. It wasn't consistent. And at the beginning, people talked about how in scrims they were dangerous and no one could stop them. And they came out it was just a spark, right? But yeah, it's cool to see that they got the wins they needed to get to this point because they're one of the top seeded teams. Gladiators, same story, where you had, 3-3, put a damper on them, and you're expecting Surefour to start. He didn't. They put in hydration because he's the better brig, and so on and so forth. And now they're in a 2-2-2 meta where they thrive, and they've kind of resurged. Had this resurgence into playoffs. So both these teams, props to them, top rank. So there's not much at stake. It's just two good teams going against each other. And we're going to see this battle again in the playoffs, probably at some point. Or they might just take out lower teams. Who knows how it's going to work out. But great match to watch. So we start off with our control map as always. Our control map is Busan. We start with the mecha base round, and Gladiators get a first cap and they dominate the whole round, 100-0. Pretty quick. Then we move to Sanctuary next, and Spark kind of mimic what Glads did in the previous round, and they get that first cap and they win this one 100-0, mainly off of Godsby's standout performance on Widow. And Godsby in 2-2-2 has had this it's like a flower blooming. I never really paid attention much because of the Crystal situation. Everybody kind of talked about how crazy Crystal was, not in the social sense and the org sense, but as far as a player. So that's where the excitement was. A lot of excitement on Guzhui. He had one of the top selling jerseys. That's where the focus was. So Godsby now in this meta with his Hangzhou and Widow have been insane and kind of a good sight to behold as we go into the next season, right? But yeah, so they take this one. So we're now tied up 1-1 in the rounds. We move to downtown, and Gladiators have an early start, and this gives them the advantage in the late game here, where there's kind of a back and forth point swapping, but inevitably leads to their map victory, taking Busan. So they go up 1-0 in this series. We then move to our next map, which is the greatest map ever made, Anubis, and that's a joke. Yeah, so Gladiators go on attack here. Gladiators are able to cap on point 1 after a few attempts, but they struggle for the remainder of the time due to Godsby's Hangzhou performance on the Spark side. So Gladiators are held on point 2. Spark go on attack next here, and Spark are able to cap point 1 after the first engagement and cap point 2 soon after, once again due to Godsby's Widow performance. Just headshots all over the place. The dink noise is so satisfying, and if you don't know anything about sound design in games, dig into it. It's interesting to know why you get drawn to. It's almost like gambling, right? That dink noise. If you've ever watched Jonak play, they talk about Jonak playing Zen. It's great to watch because all you do is hear dinks constantly on his Zen, which it feels like he's just doing random stuff, but no, he's getting those headshots. And so is Godsby here. So this leads to Spark taking the map, and they tie up the series 1-1. So now we're going to move to our map of the match, which is Blizzard World. Spark start on attack. And Spark cap point 1, 2, and 3 extremely fast, once again, due to Godsby. This time he's on Hangzhou, and whenever the Gladiators are brave enough to point their head, like stick their heads out on this map on defense, they get picked. It's that simple. And I apologize for this car flying by. It's peak hours here in the city of Atlanta. But then Gladiators go next on attack. Gladiators have a similar, point 1 and 2, but Spark put up some good resistance on point 3, resulting in the Gladiators full capping with only about half the time of the Spark. This takes us to round 2, and Gladiators go first. They're able to get a quick point 1 again, but are only able to move the card a bit past that point before running out of time and being stopped. This moves to Sparks going next on, and they struggle. They struggle on point 1 until about overtime. They cap and they're able to win the follow-up fight because they don't have much time. So there's only about like 1 or 2 fights. And this takes the map for them, and they actually go up in the series after having a rough start, 2-1. So now we go to Route 66. And we start with Spark on attack. Spark roll through point 1, but hit a wall on point 2. Once again, due to Surefour being a menace on Hangzhou. So this is a good dynamic we get to see. Is you now have carry potential again in roll lock, right? And you get to see Godsby and Surefour go back and forth with this kind of almost, not to say hard carrying, because the rest of the team is doing great, but they're doing very well to kind of push their team towards the win, and they're trading off. So yeah, here Surefour is looking really good. On Hangzhou, this continues on point 3 until Spark end up getting held about halfway from capping point 3. Then we move to Gladiators on attack, and Gladiators don't necessarily have an easy time moving the cart at any point in this attempt, but they do keep this like steady momentum through the points, point 1 and 2, and then it comes down to this final fight in overtime that ends in the Gladiators' favor. They cap, they win the map, and they tie the series up 2-2, which means that we have the tiebreaker being a control map, which ends up being Ilios. So on Ilios, we start with well, and Spark start off well, pun intended, with a door on Doomfist, and he goes absolutely wild and kind of takes up dominates the first half of this map, forcing the Gladiators to have to deal with him. They do end up flipping the point about 70%, but Spark are able to rally back and close out this round. We go to Ruins next, and Spark are just completely dominant on this round from beginning to end, and they end it strong. They take the win, and the verdict here, or they take the win 3-2 because we had to go to overtime, and the verdict is pretty much that it's a treat to kind of watch. You have these carries, these hard carries that are Godsby and Surefour go head to head to see which DPS could pop off harder, right? People love to see people pop off, and it's definitely an enjoyable watch. So watch that game if you didn't get to watch it, the whole thing. Now we're going to get to Justice versus Rain. Yeah, so like I said, both teams had an exceptional stage. Rain has been having this run since homestand that's reinvigorated them. Justice had this turnaround out of nowhere with Corey and Stratus being this magical combo. And, props to them because like I said before and in past episodes, Justice is lucky to have a DPS duo that not only works well together, they're both really good at their characters. They're both really flexible. They complement each other, but they're both good personalities. And you can have them on stage and Justice look like they're having fun. Like watch a Justice game and then watch a Fusion game, okay? Both teams are, and I hate to be picking on Fusion, but it's the greatest example right now. I've talked about this in contenders too with like Element Mystic, but you look at you look at Justice, you look at Fusion. They're both winning. They're both really good. They both pop off. But there's a certain feeling you get from one team that you don't get from the other, right? And that's what kind of pulls people into Justice. And you now have people buying Justice jerseys, people, following them on social medias, people just swapping teams and be like, hey, I'm a Justice fan now. I don't care if they're not going to playoffs. They're just so fun to watch, and I like their personality. I like the feeling. It's warm and fuzzy. And Rain has that too. So it's good to see the two teams, and it's exciting, right? You get to see two teams who like having fun, that pop off. And even I love the photos after the game with, the team kind of, hugging and whatever, talking smack and all that stuff. It's good fun because at the end of the day, everybody here is here for the entertainment, right? Like that's why we're all here. And I feel like I'm doing my end of episode rant before we start this game. So let's start this game. Justice versus Rain. So we start on our control map, which is Busan again. And we start with Sanctuary, and Rain is able to cap first and control the point pun intended, throughout the whole match, right? Then we move to downtown, and Corey starts off with his scary widow and causes havoc as we expected from beginning to end. Justice take this round 100-0, so we're 1-1. We move to Mecha Base, and Justice start with Corey on Doomfist, which is interesting. It's a very interesting choice, and surprise, it doesn't work out. I don't think I've ever seen him on Doomfist. I know he's flexible, and I know he can play anything, but this isn't the time. And the fact that we have seen people play Widow, a lot of teams play Widow successfully on this map, I thought that's the way they were going to go. They didn't. So Rain take advantage of this. We stick to the current meta with the Reaper, the ice fishing, right? Reaper, Maid, Hog, so on and so forth. Stick to the meta, and we take this round and the map, and we go up in the series 1-0. I always love when we start off 1-0 on control maps because it varies, right? We move to Hanamura, which is the not map of the match. Do not watch this map, please. I know I'm biased, but just it's not really worth it. Anyways, Rain go on attack first, and Rain get this super fast .1, and then everything changed when the Fire Nation attacked, and .2 is an absolute mess. We have 6 minutes. We had the possibility to get the record time for capping on Hanamura, but we didn't, because on .2 everything kind of fell apart. It got really messy. The coordination wasn't there. The option, like the character picks weren't really there. It seemed kind of amateurish. I'm not going to go any deeper. There's a whole list of things that I'd rather not talk about, so I'm not. We're just going to move on. Rain get held to 1 tick, even though we had 6 minutes on .1. I guess it happens, right? It's a faux pas, whatever you want to call it, on .2. So yeah, we get 1 tick, and then we go to Justice on attack, and after a clutch defense, right? Because, part of it is us messing up, but you can't take that away from a good defense. Justice were just in control for 6 minutes. That's not a small feat on 2CP. But yeah, so after this clutch defense, Justice go on attack next. They struggle on .1 until overtime. But for .2, with only 3 minutes to work with, and, a surprise with Baby on Ashe. Ashe does not get played, barely. You see her some in the contenders. Seen Fusion pop off. Like, you'll see Snilio pick her and then pop off. And it's the first time we get to see her. And remember, this is pre-patch, so she doesn't have the reload buff that she currently has on ladder and for us, normies. But yeah, they get held by the Rain here, and we end up taking this map. I don't know if we deserve it or not, but we do take it. So we go up in the series, we don't take this map. I'm sorry about that. It's actually a draw because we didn't cap, and they didn't either. It ends up being a draw for this map. So what this means is, since you have a draw in the middle, it's the first team to get the 2, right? Because you can't play 5 maps unless you draw again, which can possibly happen. Yeah, just don't watch this map. Just skip it. Watch the other ones. So this takes us to Hollywood. We start with Rain on attack, and unfortunately nothing exciting happens. This is 2 maps. This is kind of a weird middle ground, right? Which kind of makes this whole thing not as exciting as I thought it was going to be. This whole game, the buildup was kind of there, but you have this draw, and then you go into Hollywood, and Hollywood turns out to be, nothing exciting happening for Rain on attack. We get full held, and that's because Sam is doing incredibly well on Hog, continues to do well. They showed his stats where he was averaging like 85% hook accuracy as a pro, like he's playing against other pros. It was pretty insane. And then Justice go on attack after holding us, and likewise nothing really exciting happens until the final engagement, which ends up just being a pick that leads to them capping. They do win this match to take us to the next one, but like I said, Hollywood's not really anything to write home about. So you have these back-to-back wonky matches, right? And then we get the real map of the match, which I don't know if I've ever had a map 4 that ends up being the it's possible, right? We've had 50 something episodes. I'm not gonna say it's never happened, but yeah, this is actually the real map of the match is Junkertown. We start with Rain on attack. Rain are in trouble during .1 attempt because it's immediately in Justice's favor, right? Junkertown .1 is made for Corey on Widow. I'm sorry, that's just kind of, so they're heavily favored in my mind. But yeah, we have a bit of trouble here until Erster gets a 3K blade on Genji, which usually don't see Genji on .1. That's kind of like a no unless you're really confident, but it happens. We get a 3K blade that leads to the cap to get us through .1, and then we do the same thing with Erster getting another 3K blade. It builds up fairly quickly after harassing Corey a bunch on Widow to keep the momentum through .2. We hit a wall at .3, but we use that kind of final breath to roll the last few fights in overtime to full cap. So that's great here. Justice go on attack, and on point one in Junkertown, once again, heavily favored, so they roll through it, get a quick point one, but they struggle on point two after we kind of stabilize. The Reign stabilize, and they can't cap until overtime. But with that little time remaining, and Reign continuing to play aggressive as we do on defense, they get held. Reign take the map, and we take the match, which is huge, right? Because we maintain this undefeated status in the stage as we try to climb slowly. We've literally been climbing. We climbed into essentially playoff cutoffs. We then are trying to climb into top seed territory, so we don't have to do plans, right? Which is great because you get the rest so you can practice, and then you get to, you come in fresh because remember the playoffs are double elimination, right? So the teams that are playing in are playing nonstop to that point after regular. So you have regular season, you have the play-ins, and then you go straight into the playoff, the grand finals, and that kind of stuff. If we can avoid that, it would be huge. So that being said, it's insane, right? We're a brand new team, and I mentioned this to a couple buddies before as well, that you're gonna have you have the possibility of a situation where you have 3 of the 8 expansion teams making it into the top 6 seed of the playoffs. That's huge, right? That's a huge success and a huge win for Overwatch, right? I mean, it's a win for us because we're Atlanta Reign, but and I'm a Reign fan. But it's a huge thing for the league, right? Because it shows that you put these new teams in the league. Everybody expected, they're expansion teams, they're all going to be bottom rung, right? Because you have this experience from the previous season. Not necessarily, and that's been proven. So that being said, that's the end of the episode. So as usual, you can reach me at Gmail at the birdwatcherspodcast@gmail.com, on Twitter, where I'm heavily active at podcast TBW. That stands for the Birdwatchers, if you didn't know. On Reddit, like today's Wacky Wednesday as well, which is exciting. So they're doing this new thing where on Wednesdays you can post memes and stuff like that are related to Overwatch for one day a week, right? You can let loose before we get back to talking about the serious stuff. And I hope it goes well, continues to go well, because there's been some hilarious stuff up there, and I hope they continue it because it's a good change of pace, right? Change is always good as long as it's in the right direction. And then YouTube. So like I said, if you're used to listening to the podcast on any other podcasting platform and you have YouTube Premium, you want to listen to it there, you can as well. I have all the videos uploaded there. Usually they're at the exact same time the episode goes up or a little bit after. I try not to have it delayed too much, but you got to give me time. It's a one-man show. But it'll be up there. So yeah, check it out there, and like the video, subscribe so you can get those notifications. And then same on iTunes or anything else you listen to. If you can review and rate there, please let me know. I love feedback. I love to know, if you like the quality. Like I said, people on Reddit have been shouting out, which I love as always. So I give them a shout out. But yeah, let me know if there's anything new you want, if you like the format. I'm trying to do as much as I can, give you as much details and kind of, cover the games to a certain extent. But if there's anything more you might want out of those things, if there's anything you might want to change, I do talk really fast. If that's something where you need me to slow down, you can play at half speed. That's also a thing, right? So we can work together on that one. But yeah, so you can reach me at any of those. We're on Facebook and Instagram, not very active on those ones. So I push people towards the previous ones mentioned. So check me out there. So yeah, reach out, contact me. And as always, thanks for listening, and I'll see you next episode. Bye.
I have destroyed more of your kind than I can count.
You weren't giving those guns to toss them around like trash.
I don't take lessons from you.
Try not to get us killed out there.
I heard there's a nice reward for bringing